The 2024 NBA draft is behind us, so which teams were the biggest winners? This is Floor and Ceiling, let's break it down. The Utah Jazz had my favorite draft of any organization, picking up 3 really high-value picks over the course of both nights. First, the Jazz drafted Cody Williams at number 10. Then, Utah snagged Isaiah Collier at 29, which in my opinion has the potential to be the steal of the draft. And finally, the team also acquired Kyle Filipowski with the 32nd pick. Starting with Williams, the Jazz are getting a high upside wing with NBA tools and flashes of being able to dribble, pass, and shoot, at least to some extent. The biggest areas of improvement for Williams are clear. He has to keep working on his body, and he will really have to shoot more threes at this level. But Cody's positives are really intriguing with how he sees the floor, has great touch scoring, plays reliable defense at around 6'7", and also shows signs of handling and facilitating in the open court. I have a gut feeling that this was a best player available sort of pick rather than anything based on fit because Utah is still early in its rebuild. That takes me to Isaiah Collier, who was a contender for the top overall prospect in this class for me despite an up and down season at USC. Truth be told, I thought the concerns about Collier in college were overblown. He struggled a little bit initially, which is no surprise for a freshman guard, but that led to an overcorrection even after he picked things up in a huge way after a hand injury. Collier is built like a Mack truck and he'll be putting plenty of pressure on NBA defenses. Even though he would also be the best player available by far at 29, this fit also makes plenty of sense for me. Collier can get downhill, and he'll be able to spray the ball out to the Jazz's bevy of shooters such as Lauri Markkanen, but also Keontae George comes to mind, and hopefully Taylor Hendricks or Bryce Sensabaugh can join the party in their second years. Adding Collier to this squad also allows George to play off the ball more, which I think will be to his benefit. And finally, one of my biggest takeaways is that Lauri Markkanen should really enjoy having a pure point guard like Collier to set the table for him. In the second round, the Jazz drafted Kyle Filipowski, which was also quite a fall. I can understand some of the concerns about the intel that has been coming out on Flip, but I'm talking strictly on the court right now, and he was a top 20 level talent coming out of Duke. There are very few 7-footers who move as well as Filipowski and also have his level of skill. Similar to Cody Williams, Flip has flashes of being able to dribble, pass and shoot. Interestingly, I think Filipowski has real shades of Kelly Olynyk, and Danny Ainge, who as we know is a top exec with the Jazz, drafted Olynyk in Boston, and then Ainge also traded for him after starting to work for Utah, so this adds up. The New York Knicks had a home run type of draft. First, and really intriguingly, New York picked up French scorer Pacome Dadier at 25. Then, in a super busy second round, the Knicks drafted Tyler Kolek at 34, Kevin McCullough at 56, and Ariel Hook-Porty at 58. Starting with Dadier, it seems like he'll be coming over to the NBA straight away. The Frenchman is a project, so I'm curious about how he fits with the Knicks timeline. After all, the team has placed an emphasis on production right now, rather than pure development. However, if Dadier hits, be it with New York or down the line, his ceiling is definitely high. I view him as more of a 2-guard than a wing, although he could develop into the latter, but I think he has an instinctual feel for scoring, great positional size at the 2, long arms, and a revved up motor. At Ulm, Dadier showed real glimpses of putting the ball down for 1 or 2 dribbles and rising into a midi pull-up. He also shot the ball fairly well from 3 this season, but again, this is a pick with a much longer term view. Really, I feel this way about everyone that the Knicks drafted. I think it will be tough for any rookie to crack real rotation minutes, but moving to the second round, Tyler Kolek and Kevin McCullough have the best chance out of anyone. Kolek is a cerebral point guard from Marquette who really dissects defenses with his passing despite lacking in every athletic category. He has good size for a point guard as well, and his approach and mentality is worth raving about, to be fair. However, I have concerns over how Kolek's non-athleticism will play out in the NBA, and I'm not convinced that he's proven himself from 3 either. Getting to McCullough, he's a player in the Josh Hart mold, so he's a logical fit in New York. I feel like McCullough probably slid down the draft because of some concerns over his injury history, but on the court, the Kansas product has what it takes to be an NBA player. He'll be much more of a wing, playing a role as a pro. In college with the Jayhawks, he eventually became a high-usage ball handler, but this transition back should be fine. I expect McCullough to play much more like he did with Texas Tech, as a hard-nosed, defense-first tone setter with how he rebounds or hustles in transition. Lastly, Ariel Hook-Porty is a German center who played his last few years down under in the Australian NBL. I've had a firm second-round grade on Hook-Porty throughout his draft process, but I'm not quite sure yet how he fits the Knicks timeline. It appears like Isaiah Hartenstein will leave New York, but I'm not sure that a short-term role exists for Hook-Porty other than being the third-string big. Either way, injuries permitting, I think Hook-Porty has a clear role as a low-volume play finisher on both ends. However, he's also shown me some ability to process what's going on, read the defense, and make some nice passes at nearly 7 feet tall. The Minnesota Timberwolves made a huge splash in the draft by trading for Rob Dillingham. The Timberwolves acquired the number 8 pick from the Spurs to land the Kentucky guard, and I was really surprised. I still don't like this for the Spurs, and I'll discuss this eventually, but I do love this for Minnesota. Dillingham is a uniquely electric talent, and he has a role early on as a spark plug off the bench. The big questions on Rob remain the same, which are how his super skinny frame holds up and how he stays on the floor despite starting off as possibly the worst defender in the NBA. But the answer to both of those concerns is his offense. I genuinely believe that Dillingham can be one of the most creative bucket getters in the league, and I can't wait to see how he plays out. Learning from Mike Conley will be huge for Rob in terms of point guard development, but I also like the fit with Anthony Edwards, more so in the long term, to relieve some pressure from him. On top of that, the Wildcats playmaker is a logical fit on the defensive end despite his lack of production there, with Rudy Gobert marshalling the rim behind him. Minnesota also drafted Terrence Shannon Jr. at number 27, which could prove to be great value. I had Shannon right at the end of my list of prospects who I considered had a path to the lottery, and that's because I really like his projection in terms of NBA athletic tools, his track record in college, and his credible versatility on both sides of the ball. Shannon might be the fastest north-to-south athlete in the 2024 class, and he's also bouncy and moves well on defense. Sometimes the Illinois product reminds me of Kelly Oubre Jr., and I think he'll fill a similar role going forward. TSJ can play a little too reckless, and that's gonna have to be reined in now, but he should do some work in transition. Shannon won't play on the ball as much as he did in college once he's a pro, but he'll be able to fill a role by spacing the floor, playing in the open court, and defending wings and probably some guards. The Phoenix Suns used to draft smartly to add multi-year college players who can fit a clear role, address a need, and have a real chance of getting minutes as rookies. The Suns traded picks with the Denver Nuggets to draft Ryan Dunn at 28. That was followed by Oso Ighodaro at 40, and I also thought that picking up Jalen Bridges as an undrafted free agent was a shrewd move. Dunn is probably the best defensive prospect that I have ever evaluated. He flies around the floor creating events, he locks in on ball and doesn't give attackers breathing space, and he has the means to guard 1 through 4, maybe even some small ball 5s in the future. The Virginia wing is absolutely amazing on that end of the floor, but he is everything except that on offense. Dunn has a super tough time scoring, and although I actually believe that he's a little bit better than the indicators at Virginia, he's still a non-scoring threat for every intent and purpose in the NBA. That said, I'm looking at this pick, and I'm viewing Dunn like Andre Roberson in OKC. That fit next to KD went quite well, I would say, and I think the Suns have more than enough scoring on the roster to make up for Dunn's lack thereof. Looking ahead, I definitely see Dunn playing a role in the regular season, but any type of playoff importance will need to be determined by where he is exactly on offense. Also, Iguodala was someone who I had ranked in my early second round, so snatching him at 40 grades out well. Also is only a good, not great athlete, and he's not the biggest at around 6'10", despite having a nice, strong frame. Iguodala also doesn't shoot the ball at all, but he makes up for everything that I just mentioned with how he finishes plays at a high level, keeps the offense ticking, and functionally handles and passes the ball. In the NBA, Iguodala should be the type of big who runs a ton of handoffs and dribble handoffs. He'll be very comfortable operating out of screens, and I think he should be able to pass on the move at a decent level. Defensively, I have some concerns about how switchy Oso can be, and I'm also not that convinced that he can defend pure fives. However, Iguodala really should be fine for the role and minutes that he's going to occupy, so I'm not overly concerned. If he falls in the right environment, I can definitely see Iguodala's rookie year playing out similarly to Trace Jackson Davis's. Last but not least, Jalen Bridges from Baylor was worthy of second round looks, so signing him after the draft is once again good value for Phoenix. I'm not convinced that Bridges brings enough to the table to find a home in the NBA permanently, but he can shoot from three, he plays the right way, and he has the size of a pro wing. At the very least, Bridges is worth having in your system and taking a look at, and at 23 years old, he should understand what his role is. The first step for Bridges though is to crack the roster, so we can't get too ahead of ourselves, but I think he legitimately has a chance to do this. The Philadelphia 76ers kept their draft picks and brought in Jared McCain and Adem Bona. I mentioned in my McCain video that the Sixers were one of my favorite fits for him, so this was an awesome outcome. The main worry is that the backcourt becomes a bit too small with McCain and Tyrese Maxey, but I think the skill and the feel on both ends can overcome that. Very importantly, the former Blue Devil also complements Joel Embiid nicely. I think that McCain has more ball handling and point guard skills than he was able to show off at Duke, where he played more of an off-ball role next to other playmakers. So eventually, I think one of the other bright aspects of this pick is that Jared can take some lead card pressure off of Maxey. For now though, Jared will be able to space the floor, connect plays, and I think he'll be productive as a rookie. At this stage, I wouldn't expect him to replace Kyle Lowry, but with McCain, I think the idea is more so the off-ball guards who can really shoot and then do some other things such as Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz, or Jaden Springer who never quite worked out. Encouragingly though, I think McCain should evoke memories of Seth Curry's better nights in a Sixers uniform. Diving into Adem Bona, I feel less confident about the UCLA big securing a spot in the Sixers rotation, but he has a chance to do so in the long term. One of Philly's biggest problems recently has been finding a backup big, and in the bigger picture, I think that Bona has the credentials to secure that role. I'll keep things brief since I just highlighted Bona in my second round sleepers video, but he's a projectable above the rim presence on both ends with an outlier motor and athletic tools. However, the Turkish-Nigerian center remains fairly raw. There will definitely be an adjustment curve to playing versus NBA size, and I think that there's a big chance that the game will move too quickly for Bona early on. At this point, I'd say his second year will be more indicative of his bigger picture in the NBA, but I do like this pick for the Sixers.